So then what on earth possesses people to have an emotional affair? In our work and our research, we have identified 8 reasons that lead people to emotionally cheat, have an emotional affair, or commit emotional infidelity. In a moment, I will tell you all about these 8 different reasons. Before I do that though, I want to touch upon the cardinal rule in all human behavior. Why does anybody ever do what they do? The answer is surprisingly very simple and very complicated at the same time. We do everything that we do to get our needs met. Let me repeat that again for emphasis. We do everything that we do, good, bad, right, wrong, so that we get our needs met. Some of us find functional coping mechanisms, like say going to counseling, or exercising, or meditating, or traveling. Some of us use dysfunctional coping mechanisms. Some examples of those are resorting to drugs or alcohol, or having an affair. The long answer to why people do what they do is far too complex to discuss in this video. This might require you to have a master's degree in clinical mental health or something very similar, but luckily all our therapists do, so you don't have to. So what we did for you here is went back to hundreds of clinical notes that we have collected from clients who were involved in emotional affairs or emotional infidelity, and summarized them for you neatly in 8 points. To be clear, in no way, shape, or form is this list exhaustive. Also, we're not listing them in any order of importance. What they are common themes that we've identified in working with our clients that I thought might be helpful for you to know. What I can assure you of is that this is a very good starting point to answer the question of why is it that people have emotional affairs, commit emotional infidelity, or emotional cheating. Number 1, dissatisfaction with your relationship. Past the honeymoon phase, all relationships have within them reasons for a lot of conflict. And with conflict comes a lot of dissatisfaction. So often we hear from our clients that they paired up with somebody that they thought was fun and exciting and carefree and adventurous. A couple of years into the relationship, their partner's carefree attitude starts feeling reckless, irresponsible, or sometimes even dangerous. The reverse is also very true in our experience with our clients. Clients report having paired up with somebody who is organized and loving and caring. When the novelty of the relationship starts wearing off, their caring behavior starts feeling claustrophobic and controlling. This is the very nature of relationships, and this is something that we see every day in our work with couples at Naya clinics. With that in mind, not everybody has the tools or knows how to navigate these very murky waters. Some people find themselves feeling very helpless and stuck in their situation, that the only way that they can actually conceive of to get some of their needs met is to have someone on the side. Also, it is important to remember that relationships change. It is important to remember that people in relationships change as well. You marry somebody who's athletic and takes very good care of their body. A few years later, with all the pressures of work and marriage and maybe kids, they stop being as good looking as they once did. And you feel cheated out of something that is important to you. Or maybe when you started your relationship with your partner, they were very patient and understanding. But a couple of years into your relationship, you have a child together, or they get promoted into a more stressful job, and now they're all snappy, irritated, and don't seem to be able to be patient with you the way they once were. You again end up feeling fooled or tricked, or more often than not, people feel like they're in a relationship with somebody other than the one they started the relationship with. So then what do? Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it is very difficult to actually enact the changes that they want inside the relationship. And therefore, they go and try to get their needs met with somebody else outside the relationship without really addressing the problems that are in their current relationship. Number 2, poor communication skills with your partner. One of the biggest challenges that we see with clients who have faced emotional infidelity or emotional affairs is poor communication skills. Here's a scenario that happens often in my couples counseling sessions. One of the partners says, "I have so-and-so grievance. I have expressed my grievance to my partner 1,000,001 times." I turn to the other partner and try and confirm with them that their partner had actually expressed their grievance to them. 9 times out of 10, the other partner says, "Today is the first time I've ever heard that from them." So here's the bare ugly truth from inside the counseling room. It is one thing to believe you have shared your concerns with your partner, and it is a totally different thing to actually accurately and effectively communicate your concerns to your partner. And very often, these two things do not coincide. In other words, you think you said something very clearly, You think you've expressed your grievance very clearly. The fact of the matter is, it is only true that you've communicated clearly with your partner, only if your partner has actually understood what you're saying, not if you feel like you've given it your best shot. The sad truth is, most couples believe that they've actually shared their concerns with their partner, and that their partner is deliberately ignoring their concerns. What I see in practice day in and day out is that that is not accurate, and that the communication has fallen very short from accurately expressing what the grievance is to the other partner. So what do a lot of people do if they feel disappointed and let down by their partner? Well, you guessed it. For some people, the answer is to find somebody else that they believe is not going to let them down or disappoint them the way their partner did. And that is how emotional affairs start. Number 3, craving physical affirmation. There's a key fact that anyone in their right mind would be remiss to ignore. As adults, meeting our physical needs in our intimate relationships is part and parcel to having a successful relationship. In other words, you cannot have a good intimate relationship with a partner without having a good physical relationship with them. To be clear, I am not just talking about sex here, although of course sex is part of it. Being hugged or touched or stroked, holding hands, getting a rub, or even just sitting close next to each other and paying attention to each other. These are all parts and components of getting your physical needs met. For some people, the feeling of rejection, feeling alone, feeling isolated, that comes from not getting their physical needs met is so hurtful and is so deep that they simply cannot live without getting these physical needs met somewhere or the other. If these needs are not being met in their intimate relationship, they will step outside their relationship to get them met. An emotional affair can simply start by somebody sitting and looking at you while you're talking to them, paying attention, and actively showing you that they're interested in what you have to say. This is still some level of physical intimacy, even if there is no physical touch involved. Eye contact alone can be part of physical intimacy, but that of course depends on how you define physical intimacy. Number 4, poor impulse control. Let me be perfectly clear about something here. Connecting to another human being is an incredibly gratifying thing. For your brain, it can be comparable to getting a hit of heroin. You probably don't need me to tell you this, but some of us are better than others at fighting the temptation of having a cigarette, or a hit of weed, or even a bag of Oreos. The same is true with feeling listened to and appreciated by others. Some of us are naturally better than others about controlling the impulse of getting more of these hits that you receive in your brain when you feel listened to and appreciated. If you have poor impulse control, receiving random compliments or kind gestures from other people can seem irresistible to you, and all you want to do is get more of those. The reason why this is a problem is because when you are in an intimate relationship, part of the agreement, part of the unspoken agreement I should say, is that your intimate partner is the exclusive provider of these types of intimate hits. Feeling an urge then, or an itch to get these emotional hits from somebody else other than your intimate partner, constitutes emotional infidelity, emotional cheating, or can be the start of an emotional affair. Number 5, poor boundaries. Boundaries are a crucial skill to master to have a good life in general, whether in your intimate relationship, or at work, or with your family, or in any aspect of your life. For example, what you can say to a classmate is not what you can say to a professor. That is a boundary. The kind of joke you can pull off with your best friend, you cannot pull off with your boss. That's a boundary. By the same token, the emotional intimacy that you share with your intimate partner, you cannot share with somebody else. That too is a boundary. So then there's a challenge when you have a loose sense of boundaries. A poorly defined boundary in a friendship can be all that is needed to turn that friendship into an emotional affair or cause emotional infidelity. If you cannot separate between what is appropriate to share with your intimate partner and what is appropriate to share with somebody else, then you're blurring the lines between the different types of relationships in your life, which makes it so much easier to find yourself entangled in an emotional affair or emotional cheating. Number 6, reenacting childhood traumas. As adults, every single one of us, in one way, shape, or form, is trying to recreate their childhood, is trying to recreate an unconscious wound from childhood, in the hopes that now that they're adults, they can mend it. This is a very unconscious process. That means that if you were growing up and you were affected by your father or your mother or your caretakers having an emotional affair or being part of emotional infidelity, then there's a very high likelihood, if you do not become aware of that through counseling or other means, that you will recreate the same type of scenario that happened to you as a child in your adult life. This process is typically entirely unconscious. Nobody ever really decides to cheat on their partner simply to reenact a childhood wound. The fact that it's not conscious, however, does not mean that it's not very deliberate. Please don't take me saying that as absolving yourself from responsibility. In our adulthood, we very deliberately seek out the type that will inevitably lead us to feel the same feelings that we had in our childhood. It is not all doom and gloom though. With proper therapy and counseling, uncovering these unconscious motivations can give you the push that you need so that you do not reenact the same traumas you had in your childhood in your adult life. Number 6, fear of abandonment. This is actually very closely related to the point before. You might very easily find yourself in the middle of emotional infidelity or an emotional affair if you're afraid of being abandoned. Unconsciously, if you have had a lot of experiences, especially growing up, where the people that you emotionally depended on have abandoned you, you would be very on edge if you perceived the possibility of abandonment happening in your current relationship. To manage this unconscious anxiety, some people try to quell it by having more than one emotional attachment at the time. They reason to themselves that this way they have somebody or a relationship to fall back on should the one they are in fall apart. This will also serve another purpose for them. By dividing your emotional energy amongst 2 or more people, you are less and less attached to each individual one of them, and therefore it would hurt less, you reason to yourself, if you lose that person. It really sounds clever on paper, doesn't it? The sad truth, though, is that people who do go that route typically find themselves without all the relationships that they have actually started, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because now they feel abandoned by a number of people that they emotionally depended on, which is exactly where they started. Number 8, reacting to death or a deep loss. Another common reason for having emotional affairs or emotional infidelity is the experience of a death of a loved one or otherwise a deep and tragic loss. The death of loved ones, like a parent or a sibling or a cousin, can contribute to somebody resorting to emotional affairs in one of 2 ways. The first is that it awakens your death anxiety. When we are afraid to die, our knee-jerk reaction is to live and live hard. For some people, that sends them in a frenzy in trying to experience all the things that they maybe are not experiencing right now in their relationship. If the relationship has stopped being exciting to them, they go and try and find excitement in another relationship. If their sex life has been on the fritz, they try and seek some crazy sexual escapades somewhere else. The other contribution death has in a lot of people resorting into emotional affairs is that oftentimes your partner cannot really connect or understand your pain. That inevitably leaves you feeling alone and not understood in your relationship. And so it is so much easier to feel tenderness and connection to somebody who would actually lend you a hearing ear and who can be more understanding of the pain that you're experiencing because of the death. The same is true if you have experienced a significant loss. If you, for example, receive a serious life-threatening diagnosis, then you experience a sense of the loss of health. If you lose your job abruptly, then you lose a sense of security, and so on and so forth. Many people react to these types of losses in the same way I described reacting to death earlier. I invite you to try our relationship map. The relationship map is the best relationship test online. It will give you the results of 10 relationship counseling sessions in less than 20 minutes and at a fraction of the cost. I invite you to try it out now. It will blow your mind. I'll leave the link in the description below.